that are, I'd invite you to turn your cameras on and just join me in a very brief moment of pause to bring us all into the room and to bring us that sense of connectedness before we kick off and start our wānanga. So I guess what I'm going to invite you to do is just take a moment and close your eyes and just be present in yourself for a moment. And what I want to do is lead a breath exercise where I encourage people to breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth, and just thinking about drawing in all that goodness and connection and breathing out anything that's not welcome in this space. So with me, it's 3 breaths. Hakironga, hakiraro, hakironga, hakiraro, hakironga, hakiraro. And just open your eyes and bring yourself back into the space. And thank you all for contributing to that, Mauri. It really does help our connectedness in a virtual space. And on that note, Nicole, I'm going to hand back over to you. Kia ora.
Kia ora, kororia. It was gorgeous. I am scented. So I'm going to start the slide pack very shortly, but I do recognise we've got a number of people here who may not be fully aware of the breadth of the work of Collaborative Aotearoa. So we welcome you, thank you. What Collaborative Aotearoa's the vision is to bring together a really strong collaboration of leaders committed to an equitable future in our health and wellbeing space. And that's about transforming the outcomes for our people across all communities of Aotearoa. And Collaborative Aotearoa is committed to honouring Te Tiriti or Waitangi first and foremost. We also want to elevate the voice of whānau and communities. And we also want to support services that advance the delivery of ensuring we get better outcomes for our community across Aotearoa. So there are a number of people within our board, and we've got 3 wonderful kaimahi staff of Collaborative Aotearoa who are positioned from Kirikiri, Wellington and then Kotahi, so we're well spread. And feel free to pop onto our website to know a little bit more, and so that's collab.org.nz. All right, so I'm going to start sharing screen. Hopefully everyone can see that. No? All right. So we are about to head into the world of Kia Kotahi partnership and design. As noted, we are really excited to co-present this alongside Kororia. And Kia Kotahi, in a nutshell, is really a way to which to engage people with aroha at the centre. So I want to recognise that everyone has different learning and contribution styles, and so throughout this session I really warmly encourage you to use the chat function. Feel free to pop up your hand if required, and yeah, use the reactions buttons if you wish on things that you feel either a little bit uncertain about or things that you want to celebrate. So Korori and I have been connecting over this mahi, and one of the things I wanted to kick off with is that Kororia reflected that there are 2 ways to create connection between people. There's whakawhanaungatanga, which is the actions behind the ability to connect with each other. Or you can create trusted, safe spaces and see what other people's fill that space within, right? So in this space for today, we want to really highlight where the magic and the gold dust can appear. And we want to create the space for you to be able to reflect on what it is to engage with our communities and help benefit the mahi you're doing and for serving the communities across Aotearoa. And I really encourage you, that's a place where you can ask any question. Please feel free to be authentic, be vulnerable, be creative, and just throw out ideas. All right.
I'm gonna jump in there for just a second, Cole, yes. And just invite another way to think about this, because I think part of the trip up that we have in spaces like this is the co-opting of language, and it happens all over the sector. We all know that. So I guess what I'd invite you to do is think about it. For those who don't know, I'm neurodiverse. I'm quite, well, neurospicy, as I prefer to call it. It's both my gift and my curse. And one of the components of that is I've had to recognise my own learning styles. And therefore, I've become much more aware of others. So some of us are a bit of a slow burn. We like to take it all in, sit back on it, wait a day or two, let it process, and then offer feedback. Others of us are very instinctual, and we like to offer it on the spot. And still others will have things that are, by the end of the whānau, are a bit burning. It doesn't matter. However you reach out to us, please do, because it's in this shared space, this collective wisdom, that's where the gold comes, right? So kia ora, Coral. Kia ora.
Kia ora, beautiful. So that segues perfectly. I was going to ask for, let's get some of that chat going in this meeting. And first and foremost, feel free to introduce yourself and where you're from, maybe a little bit about what's on top for you. And I'm really keen, I'm sure Korori is as well, just to understand what are some of the important things for you to reach a place of a safe, trusted space to play in, in this arena. I know as a starter point for me, I like to share spaces with people who have similar value sets, who encourage the use of whakamana, where I can show up, I can be authentic without wearing a mask or aiming to please everyone. And so a good litmus test for me after an interaction is checking in on how I am energetically, and a bit of a check of going, has my cup been filled or am I feeling quite drained from that interaction? So we're looking forward to seeing what pops up in the chat there. So this leads into introducing Kia Kotahi, Partnership and Design. So first and foremost, I really want to acknowledge Canterbury Clinical Network. They identified Collaborative Aotearoa as the preferred kaitiaki or guardian of this framework. That network closed up permanently in April of this year, so we were gifted this to take on and to share across Aotearoa. So as a starting point, Kia Kotahi can be summarised as a flexible 6-step value-based framework, and it ensures that community and whānau are at the centre of either designing or redesigning equitable health and wellbeing services in a really genuine and purposeful partnership. And so I think a key difference for this co-design framework, perhaps compared to some of the Euro-centric ways of co-design, is that it is very set within these values, and it is informed by Te Tiriti or Waitangi. Now, on that, both Canterbury Clinical Network and the Collaborative acknowledge that Kia Kotahi was developed with the local mana whenua here in Waitaha, Canterbury. So we would encourage, almost like a preface to this discussion, that you explore any nuances with your community, with iwi and the wider network you connect with, just prior to any design work, because there might be some things that you need to tweak slightly from this particular version. I think the most important part is that everyone involved are able to see themselves contributing into this space and being held and guided through the framework. So before we move into the values of the framework, I just want to take a short segue. Many of you will be familiar with collective impact as an approach, and an offshoot of this is collective action with communities, which is one of the 3 key po within Collaborative Aotearoa. So collective action can be summarised as working with communities to create an opportunity to drive a focus of equity with a particular focus on priority populations. And so it's working out what are the needs and wants of the whānau for that community. And the so-called, this can also be referred to as place-based planning. Now, the reason why I've highlighted and bolded that is to bring the message home that there is no one size fits all. The approach is when you unite a community with an agreed set of goals, partnering with community organisations and government agencies, social services, and anyone else you want to bring to the table, that supports an approach to understand the bespoke needs and wants of that community, so that collectively as a system, we can move closer to equitable, accessible, hopefully cohesive and people-centred approach to health and wellbeing. So in regards to the approach, Kia Kotahi was developed following a challenge that was received from both community and kaimahi that were working here in the Waitaha health system. And they were wanting a more inclusive approach for designing health and wellbeing services. And a critical part of this was to ensure that any outcome was authentic, it was unbiased from the reflections that were gathered from people. And because historically there had been times where outcomes did not adequately reflect what was heard from the community or from leaders. And so the decision was made that we must do better for our dynamic communities. So there are 6 values that underpin the framework. And that describes the qualities that guide our actions, and it's about treating and interacting with one another in a way that is, again, as we mentioned at the start, leading with aroha. These values are expressed in Te Reo Māori, but as you'll see, they are values that can be applied throughout humanity, so therefore it's understandable by all, regardless of your background. I wanted to lean into 2 values within that, that often it came up quite a bit in the development of this framework, is saying, why is there both equality and equity? So just to give some context around that, equality is not the enemy of equity. Of course, we can and should have both, but the framing of that being that equality in terms of power sharing and equity in terms of outcomes. Because we see injustice is so often due to an imbalance of power towards a dominant culture. So we can equalise those imbalances through shared governance and decision making and ensuring everyone is at the table to contribute. So I wanted to lean into this gorgeous picture of Lake Matheson down this in Te Waiponamu here. Strangely enough, called Mirror Lake. I wonder why. The reflections of, I wanted to pause and korore, this might be a good time for us to pause and reflect with everyone. Given we are still in this beautiful phase of Matariki, can you talk a little bit about the experience you shared with me on moving from a wish or intention through to creating actions? And I believe it was based on He Hautapu.
Aye, kia ora. So here in Taitokedo, I started learning Te Reo Māori, and we're on a really big reclamation journey. And so we're only the second ever hautapu in my lifetime to be done on our marae. And so we had to, first of all, develop the mātauranga, evolved on what was started last year, then lead it. And as part of that, we started to unpack what each part of that ceremony meant to us. And part that we looked at quite closely was Hiwa I Te Rangi, because she's the wishing star. She's where you pin your hopes and aspirations. I'm so sorry.
Oh, here we go.
we've just had a really tiny power cut, but of course it's just enough to kick off the Wi-Fi router and everything else. So how much further did you get, Coral? Should I continue or?
Oh, yeah. Let's keep on rolling.
Okay, cool. So Hiwa I Te Rangi, we're putting out all these wishes because she's quite popular as a star. But what our kaiako, or our teacher, challenged us, we're in this lovely space of imagining, these wonderful things that we'd like for the next year. And I'd like to learn reo, and I'd like to learn guitar, and I'd like to do all of these things. And then she just delivered this wonderful, beautiful slap of, so when you put your wish to Hiwa I Te Rangi, what are the 2 actions that you are going to commit to furthering that kaupapa? They don't have to be big. They don't have to be minute by minute, but they have to be something that you will commit to turning that aspiration into a reality. And it's a part that we're not particularly good at, I think, because we have a lot of hui, but translating that into dui can be quite tricky. And I think it's also my observation of that space for myself, my reflection was that in that hopeful aspiration place, I was really in that thinking, that feeling place that, oh, I'm so hopeful and I'm grateful and I'm inspired. But then it really brought me back to connecting my thinking ability with my feeling. God, are we there? I don't know what's happening up here in Taitokedo. Our power's not that good, in case you hadn't noticed. So we've got, I thought it was beautiful because I think that EQ and IQ are inherent wisdoms, and I think connecting them can be really powerful. So yeah, I really appreciated that wedo in terms of, what is my wish, my hope, my purpose, and then what am I going to commit to turning that into a reality. So yeah, those were my reflections. And this whole matariki phase, it's a whole period of energy, and so we're still leading into that te mātahi o te tau, the new year, and so we can still harness and utilize that energy in terms of strategizing and planning for future action and realization of inspiration.
Kia ora, thank you. And I guess that leans into, feel free again to use the chat around what are some of the things that you might need to move from what you want to do to better serve your community in terms of the actionable side. And when I lean back and think about some of the things that can be quite challenging, there's often, sometimes there can be fear around challenging conversations. There is uncertainty, whether that's about role security or funding, having the budget available. So yeah, I guess it's giving the opportunity to think, what do you need now to start and progress through from moving from a intention to improving connection with community. Okay, so moving on to the framework and a little bit about the 6 steps themselves. The key thing is the framework has these 6 steps, but there's no timetable. And I recognise that might be uncomfortable for some of us to digest, as our system is so often focused on delivering expected outcomes in a particular time frame. Tick it off, away we go. So we'll lean a little bit more into why that's the case shortly. But I think also it was very specific about the shape of the framework. It's styled within to look a little like a pātiki or a flounder. And there is a proverb that says that the flounder does not return to its dust. And I think this whakatauki implies, in this context, not to make the same mistakes twice, and that we move forward with progress from where we began. So at the beginning, it's about being thoughtful around who's around the table and having inclusive approaches right from the beginning. I think when I look at other ways in which co-design has been happening across many, many years, often we can bring to that table our preconceived ideas or going, oh, I know the solution. But it's that beautiful thing of often and I've forgotten the particular line itself, but I was talking to Korore about this the other day, that often the solutions to problems cannot be found from the area in which they're created. I'm sure someone will find the quote for me and pop it in the chat. I'm sure it was either Einstein or someone like that. So it's really important that we hear about those insights from across everyone we invite to the table. And we want all partners to be involved. We need to find out what we already know. We're going to understand more about what's important to those who need the service. And we also need to be quite courageous and ask ourselves, what assumptions and biases do we bring to the table? And for us to be really aware of those. The second step is whai whakaro. And this is seeking out the community thinking. So this is, what are the known inequities? What are the issues? How do they evolve? And what are the whānau's experiences around current services? Or in the case of design, what are they missing out on that we need to be aware of? So this is a really powerful stage of the framework where we really lean into that value of wānanga to allow the time it needs to gather people together, to get those multiple perspectives, and practice some really good active listening during this time. So some examples of how that looks in practice is going to marae. It might be visiting community organisations over lunchtime to catch up with the kaimahi there. It's inviting community groups to come meet with you and speaking with multi-sector partners on their position on the particular kaupapa. My favourite take-home message for this step is a reminder that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So during this time, listen at least twice as much as you speak. You've probably realised by now that this step is a part that takes a lot of time, and I really encourage an investment in that. The power of sharing over kai and a cuppa out and about away from your desk is really important as well. So one of the things as well that we realised in the approaches that we took both in Canterbury, but also when this has been applied in different places across Aotearoa, is that this part of the process can also be quite an emotional process. So as well as finding out what works for whānau, we also need to understand their pain and to learn from the system's failings. From that, take some steps towards rebuilding trust with our whānau who have been hurt in the past, and look at ways to avoid that type of interaction occurring again. So again, feel free in the chat as a thought for you is, what are some of the opportunities available in your workspaces or community to connect with and learn from the whānau? Also think about intersector partners. Perhaps this is an opportunity to explore. I know in previous roles that I've had, and certainly in this one as well, that we're really wanting to reach out to the likes of Justice, Police, MSD, ACC and others, because they will hold insights that will help around this arena too. So step 3 is wāwata. It's one of my favourites, and this is a stage of dreaming, and it's taking the stories and the expertise and the experiences from the community and creating something new. And so this is asking, what would amazing look like if all restrictions were lifted? And I can well imagine there will be at least one of you right now going, yeah, but what about my budget? And so when we developed this, we were realistic enough to know that budgets matter. However, we also know that we don't want budgets to be a limiting factor. So a really compelling way to reframe this is to say that equity is expensive, but inequity is more expensive. So we need to think more holistically around costs, and that the fact that cost is so much more than money. So if we consider this as the cost to community in regards to those that are facing poverty, unemployment, loss of intergenerational knowledge due to living shorter and sicker lives, that's the real cost. And of course our tamariki and mokopuna are those that bear that brunt the most. So
I think too,
I
think too, Cole, that at this point it's really important to the dream, the aspiration, the hope, the purpose is the reason you get up and the reason you do what you do. So if that's clear, and then for example, if the budget's a block, then it doesn't become we can't do that because this is the problem. It becomes, how else can I engineer a solution around this, as opposed to giving up on that, because that's the reason we're here. That's why I get up every morning, right? So if we lose that, well, we might as well just pack it in and give up, right? So it's not necessary. It's not saying, oh, well, in unicorn land where it's all glitter and rainbows, we can just do whatever we want and don't worry about the budget. It's about saying, how else can I utilize this and come up with a creative solution? Because those people out there in the community that want a different outcome, they're prepared to be a part of that solution. So it's simply looking at that resourcing differently. I think that's really important to underline.
Kia ora for that. And I think a couple of other things that sparked my reflections from some examples is that we need to remember that communities are incredibly resourceful as well, and often and the other thing is that if budget does come in as being an issue of some sort or another, when we move into this next phase of developing new directions and coming up with a plan in the 5th step, then maybe it's a matter of going, right, we know that these things are the highest priority items and these will be kicked off first. And as in the next budget cycle or whatever it may look like, we can progress more into that plan of making a real difference for community. So thank you, for that segue. That's really highlighted an important piece. Kia ora. So whakaritinga is developing ideas and new directions through different ways of thinking. And And it might be that during this time, we also consider what are some of the unintended consequences of changing services and how do we create solutions here and not problems somewhere else. So usually it's taking those threads from the wāwata stage, and most importantly, also keeping ourselves accountable for progress and for checking back in with the community to make sure we're still on task. So the tuhituhinga is where we take all of that previous material and form a plan together. I want to pause and highlight here that it's taken up to step 5 before we've created an action plan. And this is really intentional because we need to explore creating a draft that's available and digestible for everyone when it's shared. We need to consider different learning styles to create some visuals and perhaps providing the plan in multiple languages if it's appropriate. And also considering here, how do we get feedback from the draft to make sure we've hit the mark? So offering a variety of ways to get that information. So it could be online surveys, it could be the use of social media, offering to email or phone people, having some in-person discussions, whatever that looks like and what's best for community, go down that angle. The other thing is being super clear around a time frame to gather that feedback before we step into implementing what that plan may be. So when we lean into this last part of whakamārama, it's no less important than the other steps. This is where we are in the implementation phase and we are collectively reflecting and sharing the learnings together. We also need to provide updates and changes to the approach, keep learning, keep connecting in with the community that has started right from the beginning and have taken the steps all the way through. It's a really good reminder, and especially in the health system, that it's not about setting up a contract and stepping away. The delivery and outcomes need to be monitored. They need to, importantly, if there is data or insight from community that indicates that something's not working, something's going wrong, we have to take the courage to change that. So to wrap up, I really wanted to, from my time in utilising this framework, there are a few bullet points there that have really come home, and some of the things that have perhaps been a little bit more challenging in the past. So investing in time and relationships is never wasted, and I'm sure all of you on the line will agree with that in whatever part of your mahi. It's relationships that are at the core of everything. So if you can make those connections, build some trust, you can really use that to use as the platform to grow further. We talked about that concept of equity is expensive, but inequity is more expensive. And we talked a little bit about the context around why that is. When we connected with communities in one of the pieces of work in Waitaha, one of the themes that came through is that community and whānaus want to be heard, and at times they feel very invisible within the system that's there to support them. So keeping that in mind. We know that bias, racism and discrimination continues to be a big factor within our system. And so we need to work hard at cutting that out. The importance of the diversity and the skills within our workforce is really important as well. So we want to make sure that people's experiences are positive. We want to grow the workforce to reflect our community. As you know, a number of our workforce across health and wellbeing doesn't necessarily reflect the proportion of people across our communities, and we need to work really hard at changing that. And the final thing is that change is difficult, and to be brave and step up to the challenge. Is there anything, Kororia, you wanted to pop in there, or if any, we move into the last?
I guess listening and reflecting on your kōrero here, and of course I tautoko it all wholeheartedly. I guess, from the lived experience community space, one of the observations that I've made many, many times, anyone who knows me has heard this 100 times, community do want to share and they do want to be heard. But if we're putting it out to them that, what do you think of that? Well, immediately a lot of them will go blank, because when they're receiving care, they're experiencing it, so they're feeling it. So checking in with that thinking, feeling, and using the right kind of language to reach the person who you're trying to understand, that listening to understand, not listening to respond. what's going to generate the kind of response for them that'll help them feel supported, not as opposed to going in with the focus, oh, well, we need to know, right? Because actually, so just being aware that we tend to slip into those standard kind of ways of behaving, not because we don't care, but because it becomes, well, that's the way we've always done it. So just being aware of that interaction in our own space, because energetically, these people are very, very astute at feeling and experiencing. So they will shut down if there's any sense that we're moving back into those automatic spaces and not the human-centered space. And yeah, that listening to understand, not listening to respond, because in that space, I just learned so much. I'm so humbled and grateful. So yeah. And I guess the other thing is that, you know, in the being brave space, change can be difficult. But it does get easier with practice. And I guess one of the challenges that I've had very recently, and it's like an onion, it keeps unfolding, it keeps offering me these gifts, is that we all have a mātauranga to share. I will learn from every single person I speak to. And so if we're looking for change, we also have the mandate and the responsibility to be the change. It feels kind of freaky stepping forward with like, I'm not an expert. Well, guess what? I'm sitting here and I'm so not an expert, right? But I'm sharing in the hope that I can remind each and every one of you that you're a catalyst for change. And in those tiny moments, those tiny actions, you are the change. Share that mātauranga. It gets, I'm going to say easier. I don't say it gets, easy, but it gets easier with practice. And people are open to that because a lot of people don't get the opportunity to do that. So I guess that would be my reminder for you. You are the change.
Kia ora e hoa. That's beautiful. And I think, and again, because you always spark ideas for, for me when you speak, is that I think, it's that piece around also that good planning and design of services can save all of us, really. Both, for the community, it's about better outcomes for the people we serve. They get to live longer, healthier lives. If we invest some good preventative services to avoid or reduce ED presentations or hospital admissions, that's the savings just for the community. And then for the system, by doing that stuff, of course, we'll save on expenditure by having the courage to change what's indicated to be needing improved. So I think when I shared this a wee while ago, someone was like, oh, yeah, but, and then, added a few comments in there. And I think it's in this time and place and being reflective of our current environment, it can be a little easier to lean more into the cynical side when working in challenging times and spaces. And so I really encourage everyone on here to believe in better. We are in a new season. We can make meaningful change if we do this in partnership and continue to build relationships and trust.
Yeah, and just tailing into that, again, we have these wonderful whānau. As you can imagine, our meetings always go over time. We're human. And, I'm going to have bad days. I'm going to have days when I'm really super frustrated and it's going to annoy me. And that's okay. Right? I'm allowed because I'm human. However, I choose not to live there. So I have my trusted circle that I'll go to, and some of those vents are not beautiful, but they're a part of the human experience. So I do that. I'm able to get it off my chest. I feel supported and safe, and then I can carry on and keep moving back into that hope space. I do notice that we've got Emma has got her hand up.
Kia ora. I just wanted to tautoko and perhaps reflect back something that you said, Kōroria, that really was an aha moment for me. And it's based on the listen to understand, which is a concept that I think a lot of us get. But earlier you had said, the wisdoms in the group or the wisdoms in the community. And that if you really take the time to listen to understand and take the time to learn what conditions are going to be required for this community to bring forward its wisdom, that's the work that's required. and that it does take time, and that, yeah, that's basically it. Yeah, it's really, it's so important, right?
Absolutely, Emma. I'm you know, I've been thinking about this hakakura for a baby, right? And a baby knows that when it goes into that hakakura, it's safe. That's the safe space, right? And I think about interactions with communities, instead of walking like the ones we've been, well, I don't know about you guys, but up here we've got kind of hui trauma, right? So we've been at those hui where they walk in with an agenda and it's like, right, this is what we want to know, and we've got an hour and a half and it's going to be just, and it's like, whoa, right? And we never see them again, right? So I think about what it must look like the first time a baby goes into a hakakura. It's kind of big and it's, you know, but the more that the baby associates that place with trusted safety, it's going to relax and start to unfurl and be really comfy in there, right? And I think about what we do instead of walking in with the linear approach, walking in less with the how and more with the allow, and creating that hakakura for a whānau to sit inside, right? Because people will bring their stuff and put it in there, right?
Yeah.
So just creating that beautiful, trusted, safe space, and it's going to take time to get there, but once you're there, and you know, simple things like bringing people into the room, because they've all come from their jobs and their kids and their right? Just I guess connecting with their humanity allows them to connect with yours.
Because that was
So,
the
yeah,
also that was the other part that was the aha for me that I didn't quite articulate, was that some of this community will be blank, and we all know that. I've certainly had the experience of knowing I've got a lot to share but being blank because I didn't feel safe in the space, you know. And you know, I have, you know, conditions in my life that mean I feel probably safer in a lot of spaces compared to other people, you know, who have tougher, you know, life situations than me. So yeah, realizing that blankness does not mean they don't have anything to share. It means you have to work harder to create the conditions that are going to bring that wisdom out of them, right?
Absolutely. And that I guess is just you know, because I can get a little thinky when I'm in those spaces trying to help facilitate and do all of the right things. But and of course that creates a business of busyness in my head and disconnects me even further. Whereas I often find just a good slap upside the head for myself and just going, hey, keep it simple, sweetheart, right? Actually, this person, what do they need? That's the question, right? Everything else is just the noise that my brain does, right? So yeah, lovely reflections. Thank you, Emma. I'll pass it Arco back to you, Cole, because you know me, I talk all day, mate.
And I love it. Kia ora, Emma, and thank you, because I just in there going, oh, we hopefully for you and hopefully for others on the screen as well, we've created what we hoped for at the very beginning of the session, to be able to share authentically and lean into some of that vulnerability around that. So I really appreciate you highlighting that, Emma. So thank you, and thank you, Claudia, again. I just wanted to finish by saying that this has been, since we have become kaitiaki of Kia Kotahi Partnership and Design, this has been the first opportunity for Collaborative Aotearoa to showcase the framework as an approach to move closer to pai ora for our communities. And here at the CoLab, we're really keen to develop some resources. We're considering even podcasts, you know, reflections, webinars, materials, etc., to support you and others in navigating this space, whilst also building that confidence in authentic Te Tiriti informed co-design. So we are wanting to start a piece of work shortly alongside Kororia and our lived experience advisors and others in the community to lean into the framework as a guide for learning more about what is important to our whānau and communities we serve. So we look forward to sharing that with you in due course, and we'll keep you updated. But I shall stop sharing now, and that is the end of this part of our discussion. I'd really love at this point, if there is, we've probably got a couple of minutes, if there's any other queries or reflections anyone wants to pop their hand up to reflect on. Otherwise, we can move into the next section.
Nope. I'm gonna say that everybody's just processing, and they're gonna come back and give us loads of feedback later, Coral, right?
Absolutely, yes. Please feel free to, on that, very seriously, you have our contact details. Please reach out on any questions or queries, or the good old what ifs. I love what ifs. This is, something to kind of go, how can we navigate through this space? You can help shape what other community and people within the service, the health services, are needing to feel more confident in this space. So please be open and sharing that. I'd like at this stage, thank you for your attention around this, is to move on to handing the rākau over to my colleague Ni, who'll provide some updates on digital health. Kia ora, Ni.
Kia ora. I'm not going to be much longer, so I'll give you guys the gift of time and we should wrap up. Soon, I hope. I have a couple of slides and some more reflections on the last sort of few days that I've had over in Auckland, where we had health providers come together to do a telehealth workshop in person. And so I thought I'd share some insights and some reflections and some highlights and takebacks. Still absorbing it all, but I thought I'd share with you my update, and we'll go from there. I will find my PowerPoint. So that's loading up. The telehealth workshop, just to give you a bit of background, it was in partnership with Whakarongoto and NZ Telehealth Forum. So Ruth and Scott, Ruth Large, Dr. Ruth Large and Scott are all from Telehealth, in partnership with Mobile Health in Christchurch, of course, came together, and us came together to pull together a workshop that it's not a recruitment purpose way of delivering telehealth, but it was more around how do we upskill our health professionals that are already doing telehealth services in New Zealand, and what learnings can we get from particularly COVID-19. So that was the purpose of the workshop, and also the practicality side of setting up telehealth was also important too. So we thought that was really important to incorporate that in our workshop. We concluded this session on Saturday. It was a really full-on 2 days, and we drew, I guess, quite a diverse perspective of experiences in that room. And I've noted about four key things that I wanted to share. So first off, we had Melissa Grant, who was head of Māori services at Whakarongoto. She shared her cultural safety in telehealth and made quite a big point that telehealth, cultural safety in telehealth, is no different from an in-person setting. She talked about the shift from cultural competence to, I guess, the safety side of things, and that competence was part of the guiding principle. And that was, that includes the respect, the sensitivity, and the inclusivity that we sort of consider when we are delivering health services for our whānau. Another really awesome sort of perspective that I took back was Mike, who was the Chief Information Officer at Whakarongoto. He, of all my years of quality assurance, I never really thought of it this way, but he took the approach that the Privacy Act, which is a huge concern with privacy with telehealth, as you can imagine, he thought that maybe we see the Privacy Act as an opportunity to govern what we can do instead of what we can't do. I thought that was a really positive mindset. I think there's a lot of fear out there when it comes to privacy. Data sovereignty is also really important, and we want to make sure that we're not doing what we shouldn't be doing and the risk isn't there. And so that I guess that insight was quite true to me, and I thought that was quite a unique way of looking at it. So I'm happy to explore and talk about that more later with the key people that are interested in that sort of analogy. Well, it's not an analogy, it's I think it's a good way of thinking. The other thing as well, we had Janine Bycroft from Healthify. She came in and spoke to our health professionals about some actual case studies that our clinicians do via telehealth, and abdominal, assessments, respiratory, skin assessments are also they're also they're possible to do via telehealth. I mean, obviously within some really good frameworks, and that risk assessment's always continually there. And I thought she had some really good resources as well that she that was available to clinicians, and how we select our patients when we're delivering telehealth. And finally, day 2 was really good because I mentioned that the health providers that were with us, they were already doing the work. They were already, doing telehealth, but majority of them did the telehealth sort of telephone consults. They were quite interested to switching from providing a telephone consult to a video consult because they felt more confident in the camera setup, the lights, the practicality behind things. They were able to sort of test some scenarios out with some medical students that were there as well. So that was quite cool. And they also shared that, the reason why they thought, we could do that, we could switch to video conferencing, is because with the visual cues, it helps to make that sort of clinical judgment. This was a slide I shared with our health professionals because they didn't really know who we were. They didn't know who Collaborative Aotearoa was. I did share with them our 8-year timeline, and we were formerly known as Collaborative Healthcare Home. And I made it quite clear that the telehealth elements were woven right through our domain, which is listed there just to give a snapshot there. So I just, if it's not obvious, I just sort of let you know that our position in telehealth is both an enabler and a tool within the model of care. And as you know, the characteristics of telehealth is woven through every single one of them. So it's, it's from the digital infrastructure via sustainability. It's enabling our clinical triage for our clinicians to do, so that we can, extend that capacity for our urgent uncared plan. It's bringing in our clinicians from a multidisciplinary approach if we're, delivering proactive care, and also our favourite patient portal. So where to from here? Still absorbing, but part of my reflection, and really interested to what you were saying before, Claudia and Coral, that care is given, access is one thing, but quality care is another, in my opinion. I can't speak for everyone, but I know in my personal opinion, coming from a refugee background and with colleagues that, with that of Māori background, you could get someone asking you, how did you perceive that care? How did you feel about that consult? And you could say, it's great, it's fine. And then the provider would walk away going, we've just received some amazing, feedback from someone that's Māori or from someone that's of a refugee background, and they walk away and they're happy. But I challenge you to consider that with people with such background, we're used to getting quite average care. So if we say something's good, it's not really that good. It's good compared to what we've received before. So I just wanted to give you that sort of challenge. Melissa Grant also mentioned in Toku what I was saying before about when you engage with someone, it's kind of like, don't take their word for it. It does take time to build that connection. Just wanted to leave that with you. But anyway, moving on from that, the last 2 days, from a digital health point of view, it's made me really reflect on what we could do as Collaborative Aotearoa to help you guys. One of the key things to sort of, one of the eye-openers for me was that, within a short 5 to 10 years, we're paving a way for the next generation, particularly the ones that are coming out of medical school or qualifications. And so it made me question whether our current workforce is ready right now. So I think this gives us an opportunity to build more curiosity and confidence and capabilities within our workforce. And that could look like e-learning, that could look like peer learning, that could look like other designs that we do with the, within the framework of Kia Kotahi, partnership and framework. I feel like this is an opportunity for us to further develop our communication etiquette, I think if we are going to move in the direction of an integrated telehealth environment, we probably need to invest in how we deliver and speak via telephone so that we make our people in whānau comfortable. I think there was a big sort of talk around that. Unless you work at a call centre, it's actually quite hard to have phone etiquette and build that rapport. I also see an opportunity for us to look further in that shift between cultural safety instead of, a mere competency. But those are just initial thoughts for now that I'd like to share. And I think there's a question, someone that just popped through in the chat. Yes, I'm keen to.
Yeah.
So Emma said keen to involve and work with increased primary care workforce readiness. Absolutely agree. I think there's a lot of unreadiness out there. There was I'll just stop sharing for a sec. So one of our speakers was Dr. Samantha King. She is a GP up at Papatoetoe Medical Centre, and she mentioned in her presentation, "Are you remotely ready?" So I thought that was quite cool. It was a highlight to say, are we actually ready? Are we actually engaging in the way that we should be engaging? Are we doing it safely as well? So that was quite interesting. I would love to hear some ideas from this group as to what you think workforce ready would look like, how we would build capabilities, how would we build curiosity. I think curiosity in a way where it brings joy back into our workforce, I think is equally important. I think now is the time to act. And I think it's important that we think of, in terms of a co-design framework, in my perspective, I think it's important that we bring in our not just our designers, but our workforce into the space as well, and layer them in so that we're not giving them all this work to do on top, but also everyone can be sort of happy as well. So that's the position I take. Anyone else have thoughts or questions?
I think I'll just pop in. Nee, I think what I've heard from rumblings is that from those that are going through training at the moment in a number of the health and wellbeing sectors, that there seems to be a bit of a change of tide towards a positive on what's been provided at the teaching institution in regards to being more aware about interactions and so forth. But what I'm hearing from you is that there's some specific parts of that can really be bolstered up by our support, especially around digital health, right?
I absolutely agree. Definitely, I think digital health we can definitely leverage off that as an enabler. I think for our current workforce who are struggling and who are getting by, and we need to uffy them up so that they can support the next generation as well. We can't just it's all fine and dandy to have this new cohort that's coming through, but we've got such an amazing group right now that we're actually I feel like we're at that crossroad where we have to sustain what we've got so that they can send that knowledge out to the next generation. And the next generation, don't even let me start on that. They're coming into this workforce in an environment where they're probably expecting digital technology to operate in a way that we can probably never imagine. They're probably experiencing intuitive work right now. And my daughter can work a cell phone before she was able to make full sentences. So if she's expecting digital tools to do that right then, she's probably going to expect it when she gets older to make her work efficient, make her work faster, or make her build capacity in some areas and work slicker. We need to help our current workforce to help the next one, I feel.
Kia ora, Nei. And I think that leans into some people on the screen will be aware that one of the pieces of work that Collaborative are doing at the moment is the AI in primary care working group, and it's leaning into understanding what is the role of AI in terms of the interaction both in a patient-facing arena, but also to help and support our workforce to find efficiencies within their ever-growing demands. So watch the space. There's some good mahi developing in there. Kia ora. I'm just aware we've got a little bit of time before we can head into closing, although I'm very happy to close up early to give the gift of time. Is there any other further questions or queries for people across the board that are online at the moment? Feel free to chip in. No? Oh, Emma. Kia ora.
Conscious I'm being the most vocal in the group today. I just wanted to thank you, like fantastic content, and I think this is a really valuable initiative that you're pioneering. Personally, the more PHOs can come together and community, organisations, so we're all united in this big challenge of improving services for our people, and we are those people too. So I think it's great. Thank you.
Kia ora, Emma. I appreciate that. And there is some amazing work that's been happening, not only in Waitangi, Canterbury, but in different pockets across Aotearoa that have lent into that framework and trusted the process, and had some beautiful interactions because they have lent into that space of being a bit more vulnerable, a bit mā koha, opening the blinds, seeing things in a different way, and it's both built the capacity and confidence and empathy of those that are in that process, as well as supporting the outcome. So it's win-win-win all the way around. But I do appreciate your comments. Thank you. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Kyle. Can you hear me?
Kia ora, Whānau.
Hi, kia koutou katoa. I'm sorry, every time I turn my camera on, I'm disappearing in and out. I'm not sure what to do about it. But just before you wind this up, ngā mihi kia kōrua, ko koe kororawa ko karoria. Kia koutou e noho ana ki te whakarongo i ngā kōrero. Pai ki te hei pānui pānui puka i ngā kōrero, reading some of the questions and the comments that people have made. Very interesting. For those people that don't know me, I am one of the voices of lived experience with the Collaborative Aotearoa healthcare homes as it was. And this subject is just to all of us. Not just all of us as the voices of experience, but for every person that will go and utilise or access that service or care. And what I'm hearing is that it is the intention, and I see that aroha is one of the things that kia kotahi practitioners, carers, need to be working with. But I am aware that we are all human. And after 5 or 6 times of doing a thing that feels similar, we're starting to get a bit hoha, frustrated with that. And, having a partnership, if that's with your whānau, cool. When it comes to a doctor, there really is no partnership with them. Too many patients. So if you've got it with your care team, that's great. I think it's really great. At the end of the day, in how we walk through daily life and who we do it with does make a huge difference. Because I have also heard how working with, just say, going with your whānau, if the whānau come and how they can awhi manaki, you're there, yet as the patient, And it's wonderful that we give back some of that autonomy or responsibility, that the patient can actually tell us what they want, that they can tell you, the doctor or the carer or the nurse, and they know when they go, but hold on a minute, I'm one of those people that are not often even 87% every day. And it puts me in a different frame of mind about my own care, as opposed to when I am really well and everything is, the day is sun shining, people look happy wherever I look when I'm happy. And when I'm not, it's harder to get things out of and talk. It's harder to know that I shouldn't behave badly if someone is offering me care. But when I have somebody who is being really authentic, and that's the word I heard before, is it's wonderful. But you have to remember, we ourselves need to show that authenticity even as a carer. And if you want it from a patient, you better be the person that has seen that patient 2 or 3 times in a row, rather than you get them once and then you don't see them for another 2 visits because it's been busy and they go somewhere else. I'm sorry, way through, and as I hear, I'm just not sure when is the right time to come in with some of the things that have been said, because even with equity, and if you say inequity, then I would rather, if you were going to come into this with the intention of love, then the only word that should be there should be equity, because we are quite aware of what hasn't been given or served in an equity fashion, but it should always come really from the people that are doing the delivery or the care, because those that we are serving do not always realize that they're getting something that others are, but for the person who provides the service, in your extra love or your extra attention to inform them or awhi them in a manner that you know goes beyond your normal 70%. If you are one of the 90 or 85% that are giving and letting that patient know that you care about what is happening with them today, not care about loving them, but care that this you are giving and offering is the top. You know, today, as everyone will be, your premium patient. When it comes to tea, I think, is that about all things nice or all things right? And so when you work in an office or in a role that requires you ki te tiriti to show that equity, then that's all that they see. If we see inequity or bias, they are not the things that we want to repeat. So I think if we were going to resist any of these things, then it would be all in the positive nature, always role modeling that. So come the day that the clinic is looking for people or work capacity, then look for champions in there. It is that champion that you will find. the community and the wisdom that is out there at different times and in a sacred space like this kōrero today? Can you actually share it and put it in? But for patients that are in a clinic, unless they're forthright or outspoken, it's hard to find. So creating those champion spaces, Gary is watching too, we're well aware of the self-management classes that happen, but to have peer-led groups or small hui that can be peer-led, it keeps letting others know and accept that they can step into this other. And I think that's where we have been lifted in different ways, myself, Kadoria and Gary. Look, I'm really grateful. I'm a whole lot of minutes that you've given me, but I hope some of that is helpful. And one thing I'd like to leave you with, because a very wise person mentioned this, and I won't forget it, as we have swapped ideas in the past. But she says, if she goes to the doctor and the doctor starts reeling off all these things to her and using big words or not, she is not going to remember what the doctor said, but certainly remember how he made her feel. And this will be the difference about the visit. Mai tata katoa mō koutou whakarongo hei kōrero mai. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you, Coral.
Kia ora whaia Merle. I always love just absorbing you in your kōrero. So thank you so much for that. It's gorgeous. And I see our lovely friend Gary has got his hand up as well. Kia ora, Gary.
So kia ora, Coral. Kia ora koutou. I recognise some faces from my time in Balclutha. I see Nick there. Met Nick. I think, Karen, you were at that wānanga as well. So nice to see you. And look, I just said when I was down in Balclutha, it was towards the end of May, wasn't it? So how I learnt so much from listening to people working in primary care, because Merle and I have been part of the collaborative for some time now, 3 or 4 years or longer, and at that governance level, but we hadn't really had our hands on, so to speak, understanding the mahi, if you like. And so it was really valuable for me to do that. I'm not sure what you said before I came on board, but one thing I will say about co-design is that it's really important to have, if you can, and actually you can, I won't say if, you can get that patient engagement, that involvement right from the start. You know, it's kind of like, you know, we want to do something here, so it's like the blank canvas really, and invite people in before you've made any decisions or putting anything into practice. If you want to enhance the relationship with your patients, it's really just understanding the perspective. And that's why Merle is so valued to us, because, you know, Merle brings it to where it matters most. And I think Kadoria and I do as well. But it's, you know, we have a lot of time for Whaia Merle. She's really precious. And I think, I mean, one thing that delights me, and I've been very pleased to be part of the genesis of this, is the emergence of health coaches, health improvement professionals, support workers working as part of a healthcare team. I'm sure that those practices, people on here who have got those people in there, it's made a huge difference to hundreds and thousands of patients' lives, knowing that, understanding that they only get 10, 12, 15 minutes maybe with their GP, which mostly is around diagnostic and treatments and medications, that they've got other people either down the hall or somebody who's not far away to be able to help them with other aspects of their life that are on top. And Merle and I found this when we worked together at East Tamaki Healthcare many years ago, is that we would, when a GP had said to us, had identified that the patient, in addition to having long-term conditions, which in our area was mostly diabetes and gout and heart disease, was that they were having coexisting mental health, depression or anxiety issues. And when that referral came through to us, and we followed it up with the patient, we found that particularly when we said, look, we'll come and visit you. Okay, that's not always possible. They weren't used to people in the healthcare team doing home visits. It just was a thing of the past. But what we found when Merle and I went into place, and a lot of it was Pacific Island communities, was that actually their diabetes wasn't the most important thing or the thing that was on top for them. It was the house was cold, or there was mice in the kitchen, so the lady she hadn't cooked anything for herself for ages because there was mice in the kitchen, and something like that. We were able to go back and arrange for a pest controller to come in and get rid of the mice. Or when we walked into their homes, it's all part of that whanaungatanga, is that we would, for every Pacific Island home we went into, the walls are usually adorned with lots of leis and photographs and that sort of thing. So they were starting points. So you didn't start with, well, how's your health? It was, oh, is this your son? Is he getting a graduation or something? So you start with that sort of thing. And I think patients warm to you because you're not coming over as a clinician as such, concerned with my illness, but you're actually interested in me as a person. So and somebody mentioned, it might have been you, Coral, about champions. It's so important to have champions. And when Merle and I first came on board, the collaborative, Bridget Allen, who I think has probably left already, has she, Coral? Is she on her? She's on her later in life OE.
Yes, I believe she's off-site currently. She's
Off-site.
outside of Aotearoa, yeah.
Yeah. So she was massive in helping Merle and I, because it was a bit of a bewilderment really early on, because the people on the trust board and that sort of thing were the CEOs. They're kind of important people we look up to and saying, wow, these people are very important in the scheme of things. And initially some of the kōrero went right over our heads, and some of it still does. But, she was able to just help to just integrate us into that whole process. So, but look, that's all I've really got to add. It's been lovely. I'm glad I could have joined you. And I really did value my trip to Balclutha. It was an eye-opener for me. I just walked away feeling so good about that whole process. So well done, Nick, Karen, and everybody else who made that happen. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Gary. Brilliant as always. And I was having a wee smile because I was like, yay, the key things that were really important to you that you shared, that what we had discussed earlier on is exactly that, around the importance of having people involved right at the very beginning of a process, and taking them on the journey all the way through. So avoiding that dipping into, which is which I think has occurred many a times in design, where it's just, oh, let's go and have a chat to a subgroup for 2 hours and then we'll find all the solutions there. That's not reality. And I think also you're quite right, and Whai Merle, you spoke to this as well, that it's about first and foremost human connection, and then secondary to that is your expertise or your speciality that you bring to the interaction. But always start with the human heart side first and then progress up to the intellectual. So I'm aware of the time, and I just want to call out the final opportunity for people to pop their hand up if they wish to reflect or ask. Otherwise, I will step into closing us for this kōrero.
I know it's very selfish, Coral, because I have spoken a lot today, but the kōrero, the whakaaro that's been shared, I've just got to jump in because it's burning. Right? Touching on quite a few things that have been brought up with the whakaaro that's been shared. First of all, I love the phone etiquette and the telehealth focus, because my observation is communication is like food. Food is 80% visual, communication is 80% non-verbal. So how are we behaving in those spaces? Do we have the ability to stand up and walk around if we're more comfortable and that kind of thing when we're having those conversations? I think that stuff is really important, because how your body is a direct reflection of how you are, right? So I think that's something that can be explored and allows peer support workers like myself. I'm terrible. I can't sit still while I'm talking. So, you know, exploring what some of those things might do to add to that would be really, I'm really interested in having a cordial with you around that. And I also want to, because I'm Ngāpuhi, I also want to put the wero out to the motu. Thinking about creating those peer-led groups in the places you are, because, you know, I sometimes struggle with that clinical staff versus whānau. To me, you're all whānau, right? So thinking about those peer-led spaces where we can create that whakakura to create that space. Question the assumption around who are your peers, because often the primary care space is a result of things that are happening that you're downstream of, and also there's things that happen downstream of you. And so, you know, who are your peers? Actually, it's anybody in that stream, right? So, you know, questioning the because I find often the greatest insights in health don't come from health. Right, I'm just going to say it like that. And so questioning your assumptions is important. And the other thing I'll remind you all is that you're the micro and the macro. So where are the human connections within your spaces that reflect to the places that your spaces are in service to? How is that connection internally being fostered so that we do that naturally externally, right? Because sometimes it can be as simple as a shared lunch or a wall decorating issue, or let's spruce up the lunchroom, or things like that help us feel connected as a team when we've got such very, very different specialities. I think that can be really useful as well. So yeah, those are a couple of burning things that I wanted to share. Question the assumptions, and you're the micro and macro. So yeah, awesome to share time with such awesome catalysts for change. Thank you all so much. Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora kororia. Always amazing, and I hope just as we head into, I'm going to close it off with karakia, but just to wrap up and remind that we really do want to continue this korero in whichever way that lands, and as mentioned, we are going to be developing some resources and support. So if it's something like thinking, well, where do I start about creating a community of practice or peer-led group, lean into us. Just ask us. We can help guide that and put you in the right direction of maybe there's some people that we know that live and breathe this type of mahi and want to be connected into your work and to find those similarities and differences to create synergy. There's always opportunity for synergy across the way. So look, thank you so much for your time and energy and authenticness for today, and I really want to reach out and say thank you again to Kororia for co-presenting with me on the Kia Kotahi Partnership and Design, and also just saying thank you to everyone who's contributed either in the chat by speaking, or as we spoke about, if you're still percolating, kei te pai. That is fabulous, and we look forward to hearing from you down the track. So just for closing, just to note, there's another peer learning session scheduled for Tuesday the 17th of September that'll also be running from 10 to 11:30. So the topic and flyer hasn't been fully landed yet, but once we have that, we'll share that out to the group, and feel free to get in touch if you wish to be part of that event. We will know what it will look like at least a fortnight beforehand. So join me in karakia whakamutanga.
Sorry, Coral, can I just quickly jump in as well?
Yes, yeah, of course.
There is I forgot to mention in my slides, if you hadn't noticed, there is a telehealth webinar that we're hosting at the end of this month. If you guys will be naturally invited, but if you have colleagues or anyone around your area that would be interested in seeing what it would be like to integrating a hybrid model of care within general practice and what that could look like. We've got clinicians that have come in from our whakarongoro workshop that are coming in to talk into that space and sharing their learnings and how that would look like in general practice.
Beautiful. Awesome. All right,
Thank
kia ora
you.
koutou. All good. All right, karakia whakamutanga koutou. Ko wānanga mātou, kia whakairea te tapu, kia waitea ai te ara, kia tūriki whakataha ai, kia tūriki whakataha ai, homi e, hui e, pai ki e. Ka kite koutou, ngā mihi.
Tāwhai.